Hi, everybody. I'm going to talk a little bit about chapters 7 through 10. Um, a lot of different subjects in there, right? So I'm just going to sort of like flit around some notes over here. So when you see me looking over, that's what I'm doing. And I just thought I hope that I can give you some insight into what I consider to be the important aspects of these chapters, based in my experience anyway, of working with students with severe, profound disabilities. I'm just going to point out those things that I think are absolutely essential. And we should just start straight up with the environment. Anytime you can use the natural environment to teach a skill, it is 100% better. Okay, so I know we're not always able to take people out into the community or things like that. But even if you could replicate it, you know what I mean? So, like, even for example, well, I'm just thinking janitorial service, food service. I'm not trying to talk stereotypically about jobs. I'm saying they're in the schools. Like, there may be certain ways to use things outside of the classroom that does replicate a natural environment. But anyway, you want to always think of doing that as if you can, as well as you want to make sure that you embed your activities with the skills that you want to learn, embedded instruction. Okay? Let me see what comes to mind. Okay, let's just say that you're playing some kind of game. I don't know. And, this could also be true of like partial participation, which is one of the things that, you've been reading about, is the person can maybe only do this part of the game. Like the person really can't uh, follow it. Maybe they don't have the intellectual ability to, or whatever. But let's say that they have some kind of tokens and they're different colors. Then that person can hand out tokens. Of course, they'll probably need to be directed, right? But the person's also working on um, colors, color matching, that sort of thing, as well as maybe the person's working on social initiation skills. So when you give one, they go, here you go, or smile, or whatever the person is able to do. I hope that's kind of a good example, or at least adequate example, of both like partial participation and embedding curricular goals or instructional goals, I should say, within those activities. It's really very important because what is we talked a lot about generalization, and it's in the chapters again about generalization and maintenance. People with significant disabilities at this level do not generalize well at all. So like I could play a game and then go to somebody else's house and play a different game. But I would still know that we all get pawns, or I would know the cards go in the middle of the board. There's certain things I would just automatically understand from seeing a lot of games. Well, you wouldn't see that here. And that's why that's why embedded instruction is so important, because it is the best way we have to bring the integration together that we can't get people to seem to do, like outside of task. So in this way, they're bringing together that these colors go with this game and these people. So they're putting some skills together. Um, Equally as important are the functional routines and making sure that you have them. Really, we all go by routine, right? We in fact, we go autopilot sometimes. I did that the other day. I showed up at the university, and that's not where I was supposed to be. I just got on the road that I usually take, and I just was, on my way. So when we have routines that are built in the classroom, people are more able, we hope, to become more independent because they know what the routine is and they can operate in the routine. Routines make us feel safe. They make us feel like we have some control. Okay? That's why most of us don't think we live in routine, but we do. And much like I just said about the activity, the idea of living in routine is also connecting, so that the person with the lower disability or has a disability at a lower level is able to look at things more in sum than in part. That sounds a little odd, but when you're working with people with really very low disabilities, I keep saying low disabilities, who are lower functioning, you know what I mean. I'll just say these students. When that's happening, oftentimes they're very good at this, but they're not good at bringing things together the way the world really works. Because when we're in an environment together, things flow in a certain way. Teaching functional routines really does help with that very much, and I absolutely encourage you to do that. Um, the last two things that I think in that sort of genre is the value added, the idea of a value added goal or objective. Let me just say, for value added and social validity, right? Those are lenses that I would ask you to that look at what you're doing with kids all the time through those lenses. Okay, here's what I mean. The value added is simply how can we get the best bang for our buck? How can we get this guy who can go here and do this thing, and at the same time, this thing will happen. So let's say that one of the things that we're trying to do is to get this person to be able to pay attention to peers or others, like teachers, whatever. If the person has the ability, maybe he does some simple task that he is able to do in the cafeteria, and he has like a boss or a student mentor or someone who directs him, and he has to look at them and follow the direction. Maybe he's working on two-step directions, maybe he's working on one-step directions. Seriously. So the point is, anytime you can get a value added, do it, because the value added may be, the only thing that comes to mind, and I think I've used this example with you before, but like if the value added I'm sorry, if the job is that this student is going to be like counting or putting milk in carts or those little crates or whatever, he's going to be doing that, right? If he's working next to, let's say, a senior who works in the cafeteria, volunteers for the program, whatever, then the value added is that we're going to put this relationship together in hopes that it improves that eye contact, or it improves the response time in hearing someone and then looking. That's kind of an issue where they've heard you, but they'll kind of sit for a little while, So working in those together would be kind of what's considered value added. Think about that all the time. Every single time you're going to do something, just think to yourself, what else can I get out of this while I'm at it? Just think about it, okay? Because it's something that a lot of people don't think about, and I never thought about it when I started teaching. But after I taught for a while, especially with kids who were lower functioning, who you really need all the help in the world to get them moving towards something good, it really helped me a lot to think about, and again, how do I get the best bang for the buck? How do I do that? Think about that in all your skills, right? So don't just say, oh, he's going to go to the bathroom and brush his teeth or something. Make it something else. Like as he goes there, he does something, or you can maybe build 3 skills into it. There's so many ways that you can do it. And I looked it up online, and I didn't find much good stuff about it. And it's such an important thing. I don't know if people write about it or not, but it's really important. Okay, the other one is social validity. Okay, I just can't emphasize social validity enough. I can't. Okay, it's just so important. People with disabilities will never fit in, or if that's what I meant or not. Well, let me put it this way. People with disabilities will never, I did mean fit in. I'll get to it. I did mean fit in. they won't fit in, and they won't be respected as much if they don't have the kinds of social skills. Could be in appearance, it could be in behavior, social skills, communication skills, lots of things. Okay, but those things, you need to always be thinking about how you up the social validity of someone. Okay, at least up it. I mean, at a minimum, don't lower it. Don't lower it. So when I learned about social validity, um, I put up some articles about this, about it from a guy named Wolfsenberger. It's really good. And when I put up his, or when I read his work originally, is when I went to a conference, a very intense conference, um, where I learned all about his principles and the things that he was working on, and it really opened my eyes in a significant way. I never looked at anything again this or looked at anything the same again after that. Okay, because his whole notion is that we have to build. Um, it's not exactly a community, but we need to build sort of a place, and we need to build or help people with disabilities build their own self confidence and their own abilities around being in the culture, in the community, in a way that it's going to promote their inclusion. And it's not just about, clothes and things like that I mentioned a minute ago. It's not like that, or do you have the right video game or something? Like one of the things that I remember is I had to do a review on a house or like a group home, and I had to do all this different stuff. Anyway, long story short, the group home was next to a sewage treatment plant, and I can't remember. There was something across the street. Whatever. The point is that it got scored very low when I did my scoring, because social validity means that that everything surround. I don't know why I'm having a hard time saying this. Everything surrounding the person should be as typical and valued, right, as it would be for other people. Okay, so it's not valuing to live next to the sewage treatment plant, because then you start hearing things like, oh yeah, they live over there by the treatment plant, sewage treatment plant, and you don't think of it, but it does go into your head. In fact, wait, that's not even. Wait, hold on. You know that because we do that to people all the time in this city. When I say South Side, that tends to refer to a racial group, and when I say West Side, that tends to refer to an ethnic group. So we do it already, and we don't want that same kind of thing to happen with people with disabilities, if at all possible. So that's why when kids come into your classroom, and they're being able to negotiate it on their own, do their own thing, whatever, that looks more typical, and that looks like the more normative example of a classroom, and so it's better for them, and it's also for the people who look in more valuing. I think where I have the hardest time is when I work with high school age students, because a lot of times they have very low regressed interests. You'll see like 18-year-olds who still is watching Disney movies and things like that. And I find that the hardest, because I find that a lot of times I have to work with the faculty to not do things that would not be typical of high schoolers. And I don't know if I mentioned this to you the other day or another class, but one of the things that I said right away is don't line these guys up. Nobody in high school lines up. There's no line. And they're great people where I'm working. I love them, but they'd be doing like, Johnny, get over here, whatever. No, that's not going to work. That's just a simple example of devaluing. Okay, because people walk by and say, oh, the special ed kids line up. That's because they're in special ed. It's just one more thing that makes them stand out. So when I'm working um, to try to promote social validity, it gets really dicey, I have to tell you, because, when you've got a 19-year-old young woman who likes to clutch on her teddy bear. She has autism and it seems to regulate her and nothing else does. What do you do? Right? When I was younger, earlier in my career, I was really kind of a strident guy about it. I really was. I was just sort of like, okay, this can't go. We can't be sending kids out of here who are 19 with teddy bears, right? Um, I've changed my mind a lot. Okay, I I just told you all this stuff about social role valorization and social validity. Of course, I'm invested in that, but I got to this point where I was watching people um, with things that soothed them, and it just started seeming wrong. That just because other people thought it was weird, who cares? Like it was so soothing for them. I still think you should try. I mean, if you can. I know one time we got some guy who wanted to carry his Barney, big Barney thing around. He got a key ring with a little Barney on it, and I thought that was so cool. And that was, sometimes you can fix them like that. But when people really need it, I've changed my mind about that a lot. So I don't force those issues as much as I need to. I mean, I have a client right now in my private practice who is 22. He is a mess. I love him. I truly, it's kind of hard to know what his diagnosis is because he very much seems to have autism. But he was adopted, and his mother thinks that he might have fetal alcohol syndrome. And he's just, when I say odd, I don't mean it. I shouldn't even use that word. He's quirky. I mean, he's like really smart about some things and what. So anyway, he's got this new job and he's loving this job and he has this new girlfriend and he's in love with this girlfriend, and he most times comes to the office, or sometimes I meet him downtown, and he has in this hand like a car. He likes model cars, and in this hand he'll usually have some really big doll, very gaudy looking dressed doll. Do you know how long I tried to get him to stop doing that? And finally one day I just said to him, "You're not going to stop that, are you?" He said, "No." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Okay." I explained to him. I said, "Look, I mean, and I'm very honest with my clients. I don't mess around. I just get to it." So I just said, "Okay, a lot of people are going to think you're a weirdo if you do that." I said, "Are you, that's right, right?" He goes, and I said, "Well, do you care?" He said, "No." And I said, "Okay." And then I said, "Well, I don't know if anybody wants those things, but I'm kind of worried that, maybe you would get robbed or something because you're walking around downtown with, nice model car or whatever." He said he would never get robbed. He runs fast. Trying to think what else, you know. But anyway, I felt I did my duty by pointing out, what the consequences are. All right. But he chose to keep doing it. So I'm done with it. And now I think it's actually kind of funny, because I kind of like quirky people. So sometimes when I'm meeting him downtown, his dad lives in the Gold Coast, it's very bum, 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 and I meet my client who's going like that. I think it's kind of funny. Okay, so let me move on to some other things. Some of them I'm going to just go through really quickly. Let's go to assessment. Portfolios are great. They really are. For me, they were the best thing to do in terms of doing some kind of an evaluation. And one of the things I like about the portfolio is because students in these classes can't put out a typical product, a term paper or something. They're not putting those kind of typical products out. You're able to give work products and show things in terms of where they've been working. I have found parents really, really love it. It depends on the level of the student, but how do I students who understand what it is. Let's put it that way. Some students don't, just don't get it, but some students who understand are enormously proud of it. They're really happy. They like to carry it around. They want everybody to see it. So that's also a really good value added in using the portfolio. Checklists, observational kind of checklists, have been the most useful things for me. Um, I debated how much to go into some of the assessment material here. And, do look at the discrete behavioral kinds of processes because those are really important. But what I found is for me, I only utilize those things generally when I'm teaching a specific kind of skill. I don't use it, more overall. What always helps me the most is the portfolio. I'm sorry, the checklists and the and observational data and the continuous direct assessment. That's just meaning like an ongoing sort of thing. So you can do it very easily if you're trying to reduce a student's yelling out or some such thing. You can take a baseline quickly, just put a little clicker every time the student, whatever, just make a note, just click it on there. I always just say like a ticket guy does or whatever. Just click it. It's very easy to do. And, I don't want to put down any of the more organized or formal methods of assessment, but most teachers, and I would say this too, most teachers really do find that the informal data is much more useful than the formal data. Yeah. So those are the things that I typically used. Again, depending on the type of students you have and how you want to organize your classroom, those strategies that are very similar to ABA, by the way, those approaches, then think about how you're going to utilize them within, sort of a task-centered moment in the day and how much you might utilize it. I'm just saying, for some people, they find that it's a really helpful way to ensure that they teach the skill. For other people, they don't really find it that necessary. So that's my take on that. There are two good lists in the two charts in the chapter that I think are really good. And that is the positive indicators for inclusion and the curricular adaptations. And I particularly liked, I like them both because the quality indicators for inclusive programs is like one of the best. I've never seen anything that good because it's so comprehensive. And then the curricular adaptations, I just like that they, it's changed the grouping, changed the format, changed the environment. I think they ask really good questions in terms of things that you would want to look at immediately if you're going to make curricular adaptations. Task analysis, if you want some help on that, I was thinking that when we meet again, I'd be happy to talk about task analysis because it's essential. It really is so essential. Here's what I think about task analysis. I don't think that every single time you want to do something that you have to write a task analysis. Okay. The point for me of a task analysis is not assuming a client has a step, not assuming it. And we do. We assume it because that's how we live. So I may have used this example with you before as well, but it's like telling a kid who's going to make a peanut butter sandwich or peanut butter jelly sandwich who you're teaching him, and you said, now put the peanut butter on the bread. They're likely to put the jar of peanut butter on top of the bread. So, if I said to you, put the peanut butter on the bread, you would know to get a knife. You'd know exactly what to do. So task analysis for me is really about not skipping steps. Because oftentimes we think what we're doing is failing because the student isn't getting it. It's really failing because we haven't paid attention to the most minute steps that might need to be taken to be able to support and teach the student a goal or skill that they need to learn. So if you have more questions about that, let me know. But task analysis is, you really should, okay, again, it's kind of like two things. You have a global idea of task analysis. Okay, that's like when I said approach things with, always looking for value added, always looking for it, right? It's the same idea, because the bottom line is always look at things from a task analysis perspective. Okay, so you might look and say, I need her to do, and it's like, let me think about that for a second. Oh no, I think she can do that. Oh, wait a minute. I better break that down. That's so, even just to get the eye for it will help you a lot. All right, so I've been talking to you for a while. I guess I should wrap up soon. I was really interested in the idea of using pre-recorded direction. I have never done that. I may try that with this high school where I'm working. I thought that was really interesting. The prompting, just a minute or two about prompting. One of the things about prompting is people always have different categories. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have in front of me what the text said. I'm just looking at something. Yeah, the thing is it does, I learned it like verbal prompts, gestural prompts, modeling, partial, physical, and full physical. That's what I learned. Okay? Now, one thing I wish I had in front of me. I'm sorry, I don't. I'm not going to make you wait. One thing that they had in there was something like reading the prompt or something. My point. You can use the prompting schedule you want. Okay. I just never seen one without verbal, because generally we think of it as either independent, verbal, gestural, modeling, right? So I don't know why that wasn't in there. I've never seen it not. So anyway, no big deal. But just so you know, just use what you think is best. Anyway, so in using prompting, the best thing you can remember is going from least to most. So that what you're doing is, you're basically looking at what a person can do, and then you will intervene just above that. Okay? So, I mean, meaning like you can't see my hands. You will, right above that. Okay, so this is where they're functioning around the task, and so you'll move in right here. It's called scaffolding, right? We're going to move in right here to see if we can move the task up. The best way, oftentimes, if you're teaching a task, is using some task analysis, so that you can see what the person can do independently, and where they start falling off, where they need verbal instruction, gestural modeling, hand over hand. And that way, that just becomes the task analysis just becomes your checklist. And that becomes how you grade or assess how they're doing. And so when you think of using it, in that format, you will basically say, this is where the person stopped, right? And now I'm going to go just a little above, like this, in a scaffolded way to teach the skill. The reason that might sound, pretty simple, but the reason it's important is many people go most to least. They just do it for the person, and then try to teach them how to do it themselves after they've been doing it. There are reasons to go from most to least. I don't have time to talk about that right now. There are reasons to go from most to least. But most of the time, least is best, okay? Well, that worked. So you really want to make sure that you're always trying to let the student do everything they can before you intervene. Because otherwise, they develop learned helplessness, which pretty much they probably have anyway. It becomes like, oh, just act on me. Okay, so we want to make certain that we intervene the least amount that we have to. That's why I find for those kind of tasks that I teach, that task analysis thing is really helpful. No food. They made a note about that. It seems to me that I said that to you already, but food and relationships are both primary needs in life, and so you don't use either one to as a reward for something. Now, as I think I said this to you, I'm sorry again if I'm repeating myself, but I've seen places where they put a little sugar on someone's tongue, um, maybe like one M&M, and it's really because there are some people who are functioning at a level that their processing is so primary that food is really where you are in terms of being able to get attention about something, even though it tends to be physical attention. So it's not that it's absolutely forbidden, it's just that you should never do it by any means as a first source, okay? Um, Joint attention is really important, and I cannot remember what chart that was in. But for some reason, I picked it out because I work with people with autism who have terrible joint attention. Terrible. Joint attention is basically that I can do something and pay attention to other things. So I'm sitting here working on something, and my mother says, "Honey, dinner's ready." And I say, "Okay." Even though I didn't look up, I answer. It's also being able to hold your attention on something and then look away. Yes, that's okay. And come back and look again. Of all the things that I've worked on that I don't see very many people working on, it's joint attention. Because that's how you get lost in the world. Joint attention keeps us able to, whatever it is we're doing. Like, I'm here at my computer. If I'm working on my computer, I can look away, I can look for something, I can come back. That's all working in joint attention. And I would absolutely encourage you to do a lot of work on that. Eye contact in general, always work for eye contact, always, always, always. And if you have questions why I say that, let me know. But you always want to work for eye contact. You always want to work for reciprocity, meaning I smile at you, you smile at me, something. It can be very simple, but some reciprocity. You always want to make sure that you're doing that. And included in that, including joint intention would be extremely useful for everybody, you as well. Okay, I think I'm almost done. So I talked about prompting. I was going to say something about social stories. We might talk about that. I kind of want to know from you, actually, if you've had success with them. I've been writing a few, and I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm not sure yet. Um, let's see. Okay. Oh, last thing. There is one more thing, and that is really be thoughtful. If you decide that you want to bring in peers from the school to help out in the class, please be thoughtful about that. By thoughtful, I mean literally thoughtful. Like, what do I need to do and stuff. I didn't mean like. I'm sure you'll be thoughtful, but what is it that they need to be able to succeed in the classroom? What is it that they need to be able to do? What is it that might be scary? I don't know. There's so many questions that should be asked, but far too often we just throw students into a classroom, and we don't. We really don't do anything for them. I mean, for example, just teaching them the prompting hierarchy. These are like 5 or 6 ways to help. Teaching something like that is really important. Or being able to, find comfort in working with these guys. I mean, some people want to do it, but they're still, a little shaky about it. A little bit weirded out by disability and stuff. So let me think how to say this. It might take too long to explain, but every time I approach something about, for example, like the peer support, and I want to talk about specific kids in the classroom, and then I always get this, that's a violation of confidentiality and all this other stuff. So let me leave you with this, and then you can tell me if you think, just let me know what you think about it. What I keep saying is that there must be something wrong in the way we as educators think of and talk about our students if we think that describing them to somebody would violate their confidentiality. Because here's what I mean. I would say, like, about a kid who has a hard time giving things up, I would say things like, "Oh, he really, really likes what he wants, and then he gets sad when he has to give it to somebody." I don't have to say he has autism spectrum disorder. I'll just tell him what it is, right? Right? She likes sitting next to people, and coloring is her favorite thing, and blah, blah, blah about this kid, right? But let's say that this kid has a problem with not listening, right? And it says she likes to do things so much, and it's so funny because most of the time she doesn't even listen to us. She's always doing what she likes to do. She is an independent thing. That one didn't sound very good. But my point is, I think there's ways that we can really make kids feel comfortable with what they're dealing with without confidentiality, because we say those things about all kids, you know. I mean, we're not giving out reading levels or anything. We're just kind of describing where things are. So I don't know what do you think about that. I'd like to hear, because I'd like to I've always thought I'd like to kind of work with some peer mentoring, whatever they call it, programs. So anyway, was just something that I was curious about. So anyway, I look forward to getting some grading done starting on Monday, and I'll be posting again as soon as I can. And hope you're having a good summer so far. Take care. Bye.